joined the seminar and joined an audience last week of 1.75 million people. Not just the largest audience we've ever had, but the largest audience of any comparable show in the entire English-speaking world. A truly global, open university of the airwaves. But I must attend to some housekeeping before getting on with the show. We have no sponsor. I am negotiating for one with several interested parties. When we get one, I won't have to go through this rigmarole with you again. But until then, I do. If we're going to keep this open university of the airwaves open, you have to make a donation, not a big one. And if you've already made a big one, please take a holiday. I don't want to try your patience. But if you are one of the hundreds of thousands of people who haven't made any donation at all, then you're going to have to, or you're taking a free ride at everyone else's expense. It's extremely easy to make a donation of just $1, just £1. It's not the price of a cup of tea in an insalubrious cafe. So please do so. The details are coming up on the screen now. From next week, you'll be able to text your donation in from the United States and from Great Britain, which will make it even easier. And then there will be no remaining excuse for not paying your way. We very much hope to be joined in the course of the show by the genuine elected Prime Minister of Pakistan. My captain, Imran Khan, a personal hero to millions, tens of millions of people, not just in his own country either, to cricket lovers and to lovers of honest politicians. Because whatever else you could say about Imran Khan, you'd have to admit that he was as honest as his rivals are rotten to the core. And that's one of the issues that I want to discuss with him. We haven't yet made contact with him this evening, so Mr. Babar, who arranged this, if you are watching, please, we need your Zoom or your address that we can connect to so that Imran Khan, the Prime Minister, can be on screen for as long or as short as he wishes to be. I appreciate that there are many demands on his time. He can come on for 5 minutes or he can come on for 55 minutes. But we will need to make electronic connection for that to happen. But while we wait for Imran Khan, let me set out my stall on events in Pakistan. I'm not doing and saying what I am doing and saying for the PTI, Mr. Khan's party. I'm not even actually doing it for Mr. Khan, much as I admire him. I'm doing it for Pakistan because Pakistan means a very great deal to me and has done since my involvement with the country began in the 1970s, which is not yesterday, I'm sure you will agree. For my work in the 1980s, I was decorated with Pakistan's highest civil award, the Hilal-e-Qaid-e-Azam, for my work in the restoration of democracy in Pakistan. And having worn that badge with pride for all these decades, I cannot remain silent when democracy is stolen by people who have a proven track record of theft. Theft on a grand scale, grand larceny, the looting of the public purse and private corruption in Pakistan that would make your eyes water. As I said in my introduction, the coup regime that has been installed by the Americans in Islamabad is rotten to the core. 24 out of 34 of them are on bail on a variety of corruption and money laundering charges. This is a joke. I'm sorry. There is no government in the entire world where 70% of the members of the cabinet are out on bail waiting for trial, accused of grand larceny, of malfeasance, and high crimes and misdemeanors. And they include, of course, the Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and his son are both on bail. It's a wonder they're not on an electronic tag. They would be if they were in Britain or the United States, but not in Pakistan. They couldn't even wait for the stooge courts to wipe out their charges before installing them in Prime Minister House. Shehbaz Sharif is on bail for a money laundering charge that, as I say, would make your eyes water, involving hundreds of millions, hundreds of millions. His co-accused is his son, who is, of course, now the imposed Chief Minister of Pakistan's most populous province, the Punjab. You couldn't make this up. The proximate reason for the overthrow of Imran Khan was that he lost a rigged no confidence motion in the Pakistan National Assembly, where overnight 20 members of his ruling party defected to the opposition. They were procured by the opposition as part of an American regime change operation. What was the reason for that regime change operation? It's obvious, and it can be summed up in just two words: absolutely not. When Imran Khan was asked, would Pakistan be joining the Western organized sanctions and quarantine, embargo, a siege on Russia, Imran Khan said, absolutely not. These two words signed his political death warrant. But he's coming back from the dead. Of that, I am absolutely certain. Because when they overthrew him, they misunderestimated, as George W. Bush would put it, the great people of Pakistan. When Shehbaz Sharif, the Prime Minister, in Prime Minister's house in Islamabad right now, for the moment, said Pakistan is a nation of beggars and beggars can't be choosers, he signed his political death warrant. The people of Pakistan have arisen in a kind of revolutionary upheaval. Numbers on the streets that have never been seen before, from Peshawar to Karachi, and then the Lion of Lahore, Imran Khan, addressing a truly mammoth rally at the Red Fort in Lahore, one of my favorite cities in the whole world, in which I spent many, many, many happy hours. Imran Khan will be back because this flimsy piece of cardboard cutout government, whose only support lies in Washington, not even in the European Union, not even in Britain. The Foreign Office Minister, Zach Goldsmith, deplored, decried the overthrow. He was slapped down by Boris Johnson, but he wasn't sacked for doing so. The only mainstay for this puppet government in Islamabad at this point in time, although by the morning it could all be different, is the United States of America. And it shows just how flimsy American power in the Eurasian heartland actually is. They couldn't find anyone decent. They couldn't find anyone who's on a criminal charge. They couldn't find anyone who's not on bail to replace Imran Khan. They've turned back to an old guard which is utterly discredited in Pakistan and will be swept away. And I'm doing and saying all this not because I'm a PTI loyalist. I'm very far from that. I have never supported Imran Khan in the past, but I am supporting him now for Pakistan in this one singular demand: elections now. This is the only way to solve the crisis which runs the risk of having Pakistan, a country of 220 million people, and armed with nuclear weapons, and geostrategically placed in an exceedingly fragile place in the world. The only way to stop a helter-skelter all the way to hell for Pakistan is to hold a free and fair election. Now, I have differences, political differences, with Imran Khan. One of those is his fidelity to the institutions of Pakistan that have repeatedly caused the overthrow and the coup d'etat of government after government after government in Pakistan. One of the reasons why I'm opposing this coup is because I opposed all the coups that came before it, whoever was the beneficiary of it. I'm against having an army that can overthrow governments. I'm against having an army that can tell the courts to overthrow governments. I'm against having an army that can tell the president to dismiss the prime minister. And I have said so and acted on that over decades. I opposed the overthrow of Benazir Bhutto. I opposed the overthrow of Nawaz Sharif, the brother of Shahbaz Sharif, and I oppose it when it's done to Imran Khan. So I'm not here asking anyone to vote for Imran Khan or for the PTI. I am, though, demanding that the Pakistani people have a right to vote, to choose their own government, and to choose it before it's too late, before the country has slipped out of control. Mr. Babar, we're still waiting on that Zoom address. If you're watching, you better hurry up, because this is an opportunity of a massive audience tonight, mainly a Western audience, to which Imran Khan can make his case. We've got a poll running. Will Imran Khan return as Pakistan Prime Minister? A, yes. B, no. That is the poll, and I'm told it's gone off like the proverbial rocket. Now, let me turn to France. Just in the last minute, I've learned from our editor holding up a piece of paper with biro writing on it. I hope I read it correctly. My eyesight's not what it was, but it seemed to say that Macron had won with 58% of the vote. I don't know if that's more or less than he won by last time. I suspect it is less. It's certainly nothing to write home about when your only opponent was the leader of a far-right nationalist front whose father was deeply implicated in the Vichy fascist regime, which ruled by German fiat in the occupied French homeland from 1940 to 1945. My new book's out, by the way. I'll show it to you later, which deals with the counterfactual history of that period. So it's nothing to boast about to beat a Le Pen 58, presumably to 42. And if my candidate, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, had got into the second ballot, and if the idiots of the French Communist Party and the idiots of the French Trotskyite fragments and the idiots of the so-called French Socialist Party, who got less than 2% of the vote, had backed Mélenchon, this choice would have been between Mélenchon and Macron, and Mélenchon would have won in a landslide. Idiots, all of you, go and sit in the corner with your dunce's hats on. But Mélenchon will be leading a bloc in the French parliamentary elections just 1 month from now. And all the indications are that he will lead the biggest bloc in the French National Assembly. Prime Minister Jean-Luc Mélenchon, my friend, has a ring to it. If we get Imran Khan back in, that'll be 2 prime ministers that are friends of mine that will be sitting in prime ministerial accommodation. I very much hope so. I don't know how that poll is going, but it's big, and it's yes, 91%. Will Imran Khan return as Pakistan Prime Minister? Yes, 91%. No, 9%. My goodness. And there's a record-breaking number of votes already, and it's only 17 minutes past the hour. Are you watching, Mr. Baba? 13,700 votes. No sign of Imran Khan yet. Let me turn to Gonzalo Lira. I said rather sonorously last Sunday that I feared for the safety and even the life of the citizen journalist Gonzalo Lira, who had disappeared on a week past Friday and had failed to show for his interview with us last Sunday. He had earlier said that if we didn't hear from him within 12 hours, we should put his name on a list of those who've been disappeared presumed and actually in some cases murdered by the fascist hordes, the Black Hundreds that underpinned the coup regime in Kiev. As the week went on, we became more and more convinced, looking at the exaltation of various fascist sites on Twitter and elsewhere, that Gonzalo Lira had been murdered, and indeed murdered in a most foul way. And I'm very glad to say that that turned out to be false, because just 24 hours or so ago, after I had received anguished mail from Gonzalo's father in the United States, Gonzalo turned up alive. And we are going to be speaking to him in the course of the show. Gonzalo Lira is one of very few people who are actually bringing us any news at all about the war in Ukraine. The rest are bringing us propaganda from the watering holes of Kiev. They're not even venturing into the places they are reporting about. But Lira is, or rather was, on the streets of Kharkov, which is now very definitely a war zone. The battle for Kharkov has begun. And like the rest of the battles, it will only end one way. It's better, therefore, that it ends quickly and by negotiation. And the United Nations Secretary General Guterres is on the aeroplane headed for Turkey, where he'll engage in talks with President Erdogan, then to Kiev to talk with President Zelensky, and then to Moscow, where he will talk with President Putin and Foreign Secretary Mr. Lavrov. I earnestly hope, that a peace agreement can be reached as a result of this initiative, too little, maybe too late, definitely, by the United Nations, who have been more or less silent throughout the 5-6 weeks of this conflict. I hope that peace will come. I fear that it will not, because I don't think that the administration of Joe Biden has any wish for this war to come to an end. I believe that NATO, which is just another name for the United States of America, is ready to fight to the last drop of Ukrainian blood, to see the last building in the last city in Ukraine fall to the ground in rubble. I believe, as I believed from the beginning, that this is a proxy war of the United States against the Russian Federation. In which case, I hope they were paying a good deal of attention to the Russian launch of their new hypersonic intercontinental ballistic missile, nicknamed Satan II. It carries multiple nuclear warheads and is unimpeachable, simply cannot be intercepted. It cannot be intercepted because it moves at 10 times the speed of sound. Think of Concorde and then think of 10 times faster than that. If launched on the Russian steppe, it would arrive in London, Birmingham, Manchester, and Glasgow all at the same time, 6 minutes after launch. 6 minutes after leaving Russian territory. And it would be the end. Britain would be a smoking ruin, and almost all of us would be dead. I hope that those waving their frankly non-existent willies from London and Whitehall at the Russians are fully appraised of that. I hope that the United States is paying attention to the new Chinese space initiative, which changes the balance still further against the warmongers of NATO and in favor of the East. Well and truly, the sun is rising in the East. It didn't have to sink in the West, metaphorically speaking. We could have got alongside the rising sun in the East. We could have done business with them. Instead, we have chosen to make war against them. And it's a war that we cannot win. For the moment, for most of us, it's an economic war. It's an economic war that we cannot win either, The Russian economy has got up off the floor and is booming, and the American and British economies are heading for the floor. It is a classic case of struggling mightily to lift a huge stone only to drop it on your own